The sun above the alien marketplace was red and angry. The air was dry, filled with the sound of shouting, metal clanging, and the painful cries of creatures in chains. On a wooden platform, a young alien girl sat with her knees pulled close to her chest. Her purple skin was bruised and dirty. Her silver hair, once long and beautiful, was now cut short and messy. She did not speak. She did not cry. She only stared at the ground. A loud alien with thick arms and a whip walked around her. He shouted, "This one is no good, broken. Quiet. She doesn't talk, she doesn't move, just a toy now. But maybe someone still wants her for parts or for play." The crowd laughed. Some aliens walked away. Others stared with cruel smiles. Her name was gone. Her voice was forgotten. Her soul, broken. And then, from the far end of the market, a human stepped into the crowd. He was tall, with tan skin, a beard and sharp eyes that had seen too much war. His name was Jackson Reeve, a trader, a mechanic, and a man tired of seeing pain. He didn't come here to buy a slave. He hated these places. But sometimes parts for his ship could only be found in dirty places like this. But as he passed the auction platform, something made him stop. It wasn't the girl's bruises. It wasn't the whip in the trader's hand. It was her eyes. For just a second, her dull silver eyes met his. And in them, he didn't see fear. He didn't see anger. He saw emptiness. It was like looking at a broken machine. One that once had life but now just waited to be thrown away. Jackson stepped forward. "How much for the girl?" he asked, his voice calm. The alien trader looked surprised. "This one? She's useless. But if you want her, 200 credits. Jackson threw the credits without a second word. "You're serious?" The trader laughed, tossing him a small control chip. "You bought yourself trash." Jackson didn't answer. He walked up to the girl. She didn't look at him. She didn't move. He placed the control chip on her collar, deactivating it. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's get out of here." She followed him without a word. Back on his ship, Jackson gave her clean clothes, food, and water. She sat in the corner of the small room, not touching anything. He didn't force her, he didn't speak much, he just worked on his ship and gave her space. At night, he heard her coughing. Then he heard a whisper, very soft. Just one word, "Kill him at me." Jackson froze. He walked to the door and looked in. She wasn't looking at him. She was hugging her knees again, staring at the wall. "I don't kill people," he said gently. "I fix things, ships, machines, maybe even broken hearts." She didn't answer. The next day she was still quiet, still watching him from the corner. Jackson didn't ask questions. He didn't touch her. He just worked. But that night, as he played soft music on the old radio, he heard a small sound behind him. He turned around. She was sitting near the door, listening, not speaking, not smiling, but closer. And her eyes were different now, not empty, just tired. Very, very tired. The next morning, the girl woke up inside a strange room. Soft lights glowed above. A warm blanket covered her legs. She touched it slowly, confused. No chains, no metal walls, no guards. She sat up quickly. This wasn't a prison cell. It was peaceful. The ship hummed softly. She heard tools clinking from the other room. She stood and looked around. The door was open. No lock. No collar on her neck. Only silence. Her bare feet stepped carefully on the smooth floor. She moved like a shadow through the hallway. Quiet, ready to run. But she stopped at the edge of a small control room. Jackson sat at a table fixing a broken circuit board. Wires, tools, and a steaming cup of something hot lay beside him. He was whistling a human tune. She stayed hidden, watching. He didn't shout. He didn't even notice her. He just worked. Like this was normal. She didn't understand it. No orders, no pain, no cold metal cage, just freedom. No, it had to be a trick. Later, he finally looked at her and spoke. "There's food in the kitchen. Eat whenever you want." She didn't answer, just stared. And that room you were in, he added, it's yours. You're not a prisoner here. Still no reply. Jackson stood and stretched. You don't have to talk. You don't even have to stay. He walked past her without fear. No threats, no chains, just a soft smile. She hated that smile, because it didn't make sense. That night hunger won. She found the food, warm soup, real bread, not slave rations. Her hands trembled as she ate. When she finished, she didn't go back to her room. She sat near the engine room, hugging her knees, just watching the lights blink on the walls. She didn't trust him, couldn't trust him, but this wasn't how masters acted. The next morning, she was gone. Jackson found the back hatch open. Desert wind blew into the ship. He didn't panic. He didn't chase her. He just packed a small bag, water, food, a knife, and waited. 6 hours later, she came back, dust on her face, blood on her feet. Holding the bag he had packed, she dropped it at his feet. Then she sat back in the corner. Why didn't you stop me? She asked softly. Jackson looked at her for a long time. Because you're not my prisoner, he said. You're free to leave, or free to heal. Up to you. She stared at him, and for the first time, she believed he meant it. That night, she didn't sit in the corner. She sat at the table, still quiet, still watching, but something in her eyes had changed. Not empty, just confused. Like a locked door had opened, but she didn't know if she should walk through. In the dark hours when the ship was quiet, she whispered to herself. A name. A word from her past. One she hadn't spoken in years. But when she tried to say it louder, her voice broke. It wasn't time yet. Jackson never asked questions, but he left a new blanket in her room, and beside her bed, a single flower, fake, plastic, but soft and purple, just like her skin. She touched it and trembled. The last time someone gave her a flower was before the chains. The stars outside the ship moved slowly. Time felt like it had stopped. Inside the ship, there were 2 lives, and a silence so deep it felt like a wall. The girl, now called Sina, didn't speak much, but she no longer hid in corners. She walked the ship quietly, her steps light, her presence like a ghost who didn't know if it belonged. Jackson didn't press her. He worked during the day, fixing engines, patching wires, talking to himself more than her. Sometimes he played old human music while he worked. Sometimes he just hummed and whistled, and every time she passed by, she listened. One morning, Jackson found the engine room cleaner than he left it. Tools sorted, parts stacked. He raised an eyebrow. Later, when he returned, he saw her crouched near a loose panel. Her hands were dirty, her eyes focused. She was repairing a small coolant pipe using the same technique he once used. He didn't say a word, neither did she. At dinner, he placed 2 bowls of food on the table instead of 1. She sat across from him in silence. He didn't speak. She didn't speak, but they ate together, and in that silence, something strange was growing. Not fear, not friendship, something like acceptance. That night, a storm hit the desert outside. Lightning cracked through the sky. Sina stood by the window watching it. Jackson joined her. I hated storms as a kid, he said softly. Used to think the sky was angry. She didn't respond. But when thunder rolled again, she whispered, Where I'm from, storms were songs of the gods. Jackson looked at her. It was the first time she had spoken freely. You have gods? He asked. Not anymore, she said. They didn't save us. The next day, he gave her a broken drone to work on. She fixed it in 2 hours. He smiled. You're good with your hands. She looked at him, unsure if it was praise or a trap. You were an engineer? He asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. A pilot. Before I was taken. That was all she said. But for Jackson, it was enough. That night, he told her a story. Not a question, Not a lecture, just a story. He spoke about Earth, about oceans, about a little sister who died in a war started by aliens. He didn't cry, but his voice cracked. Sina listened quietly. Her hands were folded in her lap, trembling. After a long silence, she stood, walked over, and gently touched his arm. It was the first time she touched him. No fear, no command, just human pain and alien understanding. Later, as Jackson sat alone, he looked at the small flower he had placed in her room days ago. It was now beside her food bowl, like a silent message. I'm still here. Sina couldn't sleep that night. Memories came back, of flight, of laughter, of stars rushing past her cockpit. Then the sound of chains, screams, her name being erased. But now, the silence wasn't heavy. It was warm. It let her breathe. And in that silence, she whispered to herself, I remember who I was. She still didn't tell Jackson her real name. But in her dreams, she said it loud. Not as a slave, not as a broken toy, but as a pilot, a daughter, a person. The ship flew over the sands of a dead moon. Dust brushed the windows like whispers from the past. Inside, Sina was changing, not quickly, not loudly, but piece by piece like a cracked starship slowly returning to power. She now walked with a steady step. Her eyes still watched everything, but they were brighter, more alive. Jackson noticed. One morning, he asked gently, Do you remember your name? Your real one? She paused, hands deep inside a circuit panel. The silence was sharp. I don't. No, she said, a lie. He knew it, but he didn't press. Then I'll call you Sina, he said. It means light. Sina looked at him. Her lips moved like she wanted to argue, but the name stayed with her. Light. She said it inside her mind 100 times that day. Later, she looked into a broken mirror. The girl looking back was not a toy, not a slave, not a ghost. She whispered, I am, Sina. And for the first time she believed it. Jackson brought her a pilot's glove, found it in an old box. Sina touched it with shaking fingers. It was small, worn, human-sized, but it reminded her of something, herself. He smiled. You said you were a pilot. I was, she whispered. I think I still am. They flew together the next day. Jackson showed her the controls. She didn't need much help. Her hands remembered. She touched the throttle, closed her eyes, and the stars spoke again. Feels like home, she said. Jackson looked at her. You're not broken, he said. Her hands trembled, but she didn't cry. Not yet. That night, the stars outside blinked slow and soft. Jackson played, quiet music. Sina sat nearby, listening. She held the flower he had given her. It was plastic, cheap, but she kept it with care now. Why did you buy me? She asked suddenly. Jackson looked surprised. He thought for a moment. Because I couldn't walk away, he said. And I think you weren't the only one who was broken. Silence followed, but not the heavy kind. It was warm, safe. Before sleeping, Sina stood in the hallway, looking out the window. Her reflection was in the glass. This time, she didn't see a slave. She saw someone rising from the ashes. Inside, her room, she took a piece of metal and scratched something into the wall above her bed. A name, her true one. She didn't speak it out loud, not yet, but she looked at it before sleeping. And in her dream, she was flying again, not running from war, but flying home. The ship glided over a blue gas giant. Light poured into the cockpit like flowing water. Sina sat in the pilot's chair, alone. Her hands moved over the controls with grace. Like an old dance, she was finally allowed to perform again. Jackson stood behind her, arms crossed, watching. You fly better than me, he said. She smiled, not a fake smile, not a polite smile, a real one, soft, unsure, but filled with something she had long forgotten. Pride. It had been 12 days since she spoke her new name out loud, not her real name. Not yet. But Sina felt like skin that fit, like armor that healed, not just protected. And now she wasn't hiding in corners or whispering in the dark. She walked the ship like she belonged to it, not like a servant, like a crewmate. Jackson found her singing one morning. It was low, in her native tongue, words even he didn't understand, but her voice was clear, warm. She stopped when she noticed him. "You can keep going," he said. She looked away, but smiled again, and that smile said more than words ever could. That same evening, a warning light blinked on the ship's console. Fuel leak, a dangerous one. Jackson cursed and rushed to the engine room. Before he could climb in, Sina was already crawling through the maintenance duct. "Sina, that gas can burn your lungs," he shouted. She didn't stop. She reached the pipe, clamped it with shaking fingers, and sealed the leak. Jackson pulled her out coughing, eyes red, chest heaving. He wrapped her in a blanket, held her, and whispered, "You didn't have to do that." She looked up at him, weak but smiling. "You said I was your co-pilot, so I acted like one." The next day, she was resting in her bed when a message came through the ship's comms, encrypted. Official. Jackson's face turned hard as stone. When he read it, her name, her serial number, her old master had found her, and legally, under alien law, she was still his property. They were sending bounty hunters. Sina found him staring at the screen. "Is it about me?" she asked. He didn't lie. "Yes." She looked at the message. Calm. Numb. "I'll go," she said. "I won't let them hurt you." Jackson stood. "No," he said sharply. "I don't own you, but I won't give you up either." She blinked. "You'd fight for me?" He nodded. "Not because I bought you, because I see you." Sina lowered her eyes. No one had ever said that before. Not even her own people. That night she opened a small drawer in her room. Inside, the metal scrap she had carved days ago. Her true name. She picked it up, looked at it, held it to her chest, and whispered, "I am not a toy." The stars outside shimmered, and for the first time in years she felt ready to fight. The red alert blared across the ship. "They found us," Jackson muttered, gripping the controls. Sina stood behind him, calm but alert, eyes locked on the display. 3 ships, fast, armed, coming straight at them. The bounty hunters had arrived. Her old owner had sent them, armed with legal rights, weapons, and no mercy. Jackson looked at Sina. "We can still run." She shook her head. "We're too close, they'll catch us." He nodded. "Then we fight." But he paused. "You don't have to. I'll handle this." She stepped forward, placed a hand on his shoulder. "No," she said firmly. "We handle this together." As Jackson powered the ship's shields, Sina rushed to the weapons console. She didn't hesitate. Her fingers danced across controls like she was born for them. "Turrets active. Rear flares ready," she said, voice strong. He glanced back. "You remember how to do all this?" She smiled. "I never forgot." The first blast hit. The ship shook, but the shields held. "Return fire," Jackson shouted. Sina launched 2 plasma bolts. One enemy ship dodged. The second took a hit, another blast. Sparks flew from a wall panel. "We lose another hit like that," Jackson warned. "We're dead." But Sina wasn't scared. She was focused. She was free. Then came a voice through the comms, rough, cold. "Return the property, or we board your ship and take her." Sina stepped forward, pressed the comm button, and said in a calm voice, "I am no one's property." Silence, then laughter. "We broke you once. We'll do it again." Jackson moved to answer, but Sina stopped him. She opened the weapons panel fully and whispered something in her own language, a word filled with rage, memory, and strength. Then, she fired a direct shot. One hunter ship exploded into fire, the others charged. Sina jumped into the pilot seat. Jackson took weapons. She flew like a ghost through the stars, twisting, spinning, dodging shots with impossible skill. Jackson watched her in awe. "You're incredible," he said. She didn't reply. Her eyes were locked forward, cold, determined, like a warrior reborn. After a wild chase, she looped behind one ship and Jackson hit it with a missile. It spun out into a nearby asteroid. Now only one was left. The biggest, the leader. He sent another message. You can't run forever. She belongs to me. Sina leaned close to the mic. She belonged to no one. Not then. Not now. The enemy ship powered its cannons. But before it could fire, Sina flipped the ship vertically, flew above the attacker, and launched a high-speed torpedo right into its hull. Boom. Gone. Silence returned. Stars twinkled. Jackson slowly sat back, breathing hard. You just fought off 3 bounty ships, he said, stunned. Sina turned to him, her face lit by cockpit lights. I fought for myself, she said, then softer. But I also fought for you. Later they sat in the dining bay. No alarms, no running. Just 2 people. Breathing. Jackson looked at her carefully. You've changed. Sina shook her head. No, I just remembered who I was. She reached into her pocket and placed a small metal piece on the table. Her true name, carved long ago. Jackson picked it up. Can I know how to say it? She smiled and whispered it to him. He repeated it, slowly, carefully. She laughed softly. Close enough. That night she sat in her bed holding the old plastic flower. It looked silly now, but it was the first thing anyone gave her after her freedom. She placed it beside her nameplate on a small shelf. A gift, a memory, a piece of a life she was now building for herself. The stars outside the window didn't move. Jackson's ship floated silently above a cold planet, its engines sleeping after the storm of battle. Inside, all was quiet. But inside Sina's heart, something had changed forever. She sat alone in her small room, holding 2 things in her hands. One was the plastic flower Jackson gave her when she first arrived. The other was her nameplate. A small metal scrap where she had carved her real name. Together they were proof. Proof that she had not just survived, she had returned. A soft knock came at her door. Jackson entered without speaking. He placed a warm cup of tea on her table, then sat beside her on the floor. They stared out the window together. No words, no questions, just understanding. I never thanked you, she said after a long silence. For what? He asked. For not seeing me the way they did. For not using me, for giving me time. Jackson leaned back, staring at the stars. You gave me something too, he said. Sina looked at him. You reminded me why I became a pilot in the first place. Why I cared. Why I still fight. Outside, a small moon passed slowly across the stars. Sina leaned her head on his shoulder. It wasn't romantic. It was safe. Warm. Real. They stayed like that for a long time. Then, softly, she began to speak. Not about chains. Not about pain. But about before. Her home. A planet covered in silver forests and blue skies, songs sung by wind, birds that glowed at night, her family, her dream to be the first pilot from her clan, how she flew her first ship at age 11, and how everything changed when war came. Jackson listened without interrupting. At the end, she asked quietly, Do you think they're still alive? He didn't lie. I don't know. She nodded. But in her eyes there was still hope. Later, as the ship drifted through deep space, Jackson and Sina worked side by side. They rebuilt the engine, cleaned the hull, adjusted the solar panels, not as master and servant, as crew, as friends. One day, while repairing an outer panel, Jackson slipped and cut his hand. Sina rushed over, grabbing his wrist. Blood flowed from his palm. She quickly wrapped it, hands moving fast and steady. You're hurt, she said, her voice full of worry. Jackson smiled through the pain. So are you, he said. She blinked. But she understood. They both had wounds. Not all of them visible, but healing, together. That night, Jackson called her to the control room. "I have something to show you," he said. He opened a star map. One blinking dot pulsed slowly near the edge of the screen. "A distress signal," he explained. "Old, hidden, buried, in static. But it's from your people." Sina froze. Her fingers trembled as she touched the screen. The signal was weak, years old. But it was real. A voice, faint and broken, spoke in her native tongue. It said, "We are not gone. We wait for the sky to return us." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I thought they were all dead." Jackson touched her hand. "They survived. Just like you." She packed her things in silence that night, not because she was leaving forever, but because she was ready to go home, to find what was left, to rebuild what was broken. Before they parted, she stood in the hallway, holding the flower in the nameplate. She looked up at Jackson. "Why did you really save me?" she asked. He thought for a long moment, then said, "Because someone once saved me when I was broken, and I promised myself I'd do the same for someone else." Sina stepped forward, wrapped her arms around him, tight, quiet, a hug full of stories, pain, and hope. Then she pulled back, smiling. "I'm not a toy." "No," he said. "You're a starship pilot, one of the best I've ever seen." The next morning, a smaller ship left the hangar, Sina's hands on the controls, eyes forward, heart full. She didn't fly away from something. She flew toward something. Home. Family. Healing. But before she left the atmosphere, she opened a channel to Jackson. "Jackson? Yeah? Don't forget me." He smiled through the screen. "Never." Her ship vanished into the stars, and Jackson stood in the doorway, the wind brushing against his coat. In his hand he held something, a metal scrap, carved with her name. Because sometimes the heart is a strange machine. It breaks. It rusts. But with time, kindness, and a little light, it can be repaired.